Hello and welcome to the Triple B podcast. We are the Buds Busting Balls. My name is Matt Worsham. I am celiac_Matt on Twitch. We have Mike Bowerman, Bowertendo on Twitch and everything, who has a beard that reminds me of a chia pet, and I'm still trying to decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be determined. And with us is also Scott Stevens, the man who I once saw run his head into a pole, and I'm still questioning if he's still not recovered from that this many years removed. Today, we're going to talk about Microsoft and how they seem to own the world. First, I gotta ask, what are the Buds playing? Let's start with Scott, Mr. Head Injury. Scott, what are you playing these days?
Yeah, so kind of continuation of last season's big climax. I'm still playing Fortnite. Level 21 on the new season has just started, so yes, still going strong on that. And I also went and followed one of Matt's suggestions, and I have been playing Slay the Spire. It is actually a very fun game. It very much scratches that deck building itch I have. And then another one that I started, I'm trying to force myself to get into, is WrestleQuest. So won't talk too much about it. Love the combat, love like the wrestling gimmick. The story and the setting, though, I'm not super vibing with. But yeah, I think they had a really good idea and they're overcomplicating it. But anyway, so that's what I'm currently playing.
That's what you're playing. Mike, what are you playing?
Right now, I am playing two games. I just wrapped up Diablo 4 campaign. I'm sure I'll be playing that more. But my two focus games now are Sea of Stars, which just released. Great impressions so far in the first couple hours. And I'm replaying Spider-Man, but I'm playing Spider-Man Remastered since it went on sale to prep for Spider-Man 2. So that's what I'm playing right now.
Yeah, I actually started replaying Borderlands 3 recently. I just wanted something mindless to shoot in the background. And while we have some major gripes with Borderlands 3, as we're all big Borderlands fans, not paying attention to the story and just shooting people, a lot of fun. I've been enjoying that. Question number 2, we'll start with Mike on this one. Mike, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking a cold brew from a shoe.
He's straight up drinking from a shoe.
And that was not a fake drink. That was a real drink.
A cold brew shoe.
A cold brew shoe.
That is superb. Scott, what are you drinking tonight?
I am having a very tasty guava hard lemonade from Barrel House Brewing Company. Alcoholic big boy drink.
That is stupendous. And
Don't go play Fortnite after this.
Oh, he should.
I play Fortnite best drunk.
And he buys Fortnite.
Buys everything in Fortnite.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Real quick, what I'm drinking, it's just water today. Let's take a slurp, shall we? Delicious, delicious water. We love it. So today's subject, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about Microsoft and how they own everything. We're going to give it to Mike to tell us a bit more about the topic and what you guys are in store for tonight. Mike, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so what we are going to be talking about. So, and it's funny. This has been ongoing for, what, a year now? It's been, like, the Activision thing's been a year. But Microsoft, went on a couple years back, went on a buying spree. I mean, buying smaller companies, mid-sized companies, and where they've kind of run into a bit of a wall because, if we're being honest, Sony's just, bitching and whining about something, is Activision Blizzard. And they just went on this buying spree, and the big thing coming up soon, Starfield, right? And that is not coming to PlayStation. That is coming to Xbox and PC. And so it seems like they're buying a lot of these developer studios. And, what we're going to talk about is this good for the industry or is this bad for the industry? This is going to affect the industry in some way. I don't think there's going to be a middle ground here. It may lean a little bit more mid, but it's going to affect it in some way. So, a couple of key points that I want to just dive right into this that my initial gut reaction to is creativity going to be killed here? So like one of the smaller Double Fine, right? I believe they bought Double Fine, and that was kind of a beloved developer, and is the creativity going to go out the window now that they've become corporate, so to speak, right? Or is this the opposite? Is this giving money to studios that deserve it? So like maybe Double Fine deserve that financial stability, right? Because they are making good stuff. So now they got that there. And on top of that, the final point here that I want to bring up before we get to the elephant in the room is oversight. So Microsoft has gone on the record, and Scott is the resident Microsoft guru here, but they've said they want to just stay out of it. Like they bought these developers and they're like, no, handle it in house. We're just funding you. We're helping you to go, right? We're putting the fuel in your engine, and that has come back with some examples that we'll probably talk about a little bit later of maybe being good, maybe being not so good, right? But the big deal, and I think we're going to start with this one first. Monopolies. We hate them, right? So, I mean, my example is Disney. I just want to throw that out there. I mean, I'm sure you listener, viewer are thinking right now, I'm sure you two are thinking right now of certain monopolies that are like, ugh. The one that immediately comes to mind, and I don't know if I'd call it a monopoly yet, but it really feels like it, is Disney. Like, owning everything. And it's funny because they seem to be paying for it now, like literally losing money. But it just, everything got, that creativity, right? That creativity kind of went out the window. Yeah, the money went to these studios that maybe deserved it, but the creativity went out the window. And the oversight, they were a little bit too hands-on, right? And there was no competition, so to speak. So, monopolies. This feels like a monopoly, but I know not everybody feels that way. Scott, you got something?
First off, I was going to make a really witty Monopoly board game joke, and now I completely forgot what it is. So how dare you?
I'll talk about the board game real quick. Is one, I
It's
hate
the
the
worst.
board game. It's the worst.
Or
It is
do not pass
terrible.
go. Do not get $200.
Yeah, it is. It is awful. But you know what actually is fun is digital versions of Monopoly where you can fast forward through things. I've wasted a lot of time on like a tablet or a phone just playing Monopoly against CPUs. The game's done in like, I don't know, 30 minutes tops. So digital Monopoly, cool. Physical Monopoly, if you ask me to do that, our friendship is terminated. You are dead to me.
We're done.
So let's talk about actual monopolies, not that awful board game. Sorry, Scott, go for it.
I also promised this season I would stay more on topic, but damn it, I'm going to do a little bit of a rant.
He's already done it. Let's go.
I'm already doing it. All this talk about Microsoft doing monopolies. I don't know if we have any Pinky in the Brain fans out there, but I remember way back in the day, there was an episode where Bill Gates bought like the entire world because he was so freaking rich, and Pinky in the Brain are trying to like steal everything Bill Gates owns because he owns the world. And it turned out Bill Gates was really a gerbil or whatever. But it's just, I find it really ironic that this Pinky in the Brain episode kind of predicted 20 years back that Microsoft would buy everything. But as far as my opinion about this goes, I don't believe this is a monopoly. So if you look at the very textbook definition of monopoly, that's basically that you're at the point where you have so much control over the market that your competitors can't do anything. You can set the prices, you can crush people like the snap of your fingers. Like, I think, and we'll talk about this more later, but I think, yeah, maybe Microsoft will have a lot of like really popular Western studios, but they have not made a dent in Japan, and they will continue not to make a dent in Japan. You can go and say that however hard of a stranglehold Microsoft gets on the Western market, Sony, Nintendo has like twice as hard of a grip in the East. Two, there's been lots of stuff from the governments of various countries, like specifically making it so Microsoft doesn't make this a monopoly. Microsoft says they're not looking to do that. They're looking to play ball and share these games with our studios. I know Starfield is an example of something they're hoarding to themselves, but whether it was just Microsoft saying it to play nice, it doesn't really matter at this point because, they actually have made agreements with various governments that, nope, we're not going to make monopolies out of this. at least with the Activision Blizzard case. But I mean, that's a very huge deal. So I personally don't see this as being a monopoly. Do they own a lot of studios now? Definitely. I don't think it matches the classification though of a monopoly.
That's true. And I guess the concern though is still there. Is monopolies by default, bad, right? We all agree on that one. And the fact that this took so long via EU in particular, like their court system, I believe, I don't know what the official term is over there, but the reason that the deal took so long to basically move forward was because EU was like, is this a monopoly? Because they're bad. And they ultimately said, you know what? This is fine. So I guess by that default, if a
Yeah.
rather strict area like the EU says it's not a monopoly, then I guess it's not a monopoly. But the point that I know Mike was making is like, are monopolies bad and would they be bad for gaming? Absolutely. I don't know if Microsoft is there just yet,
Yep.
but it is still something to be very aware of and concerned of when it comes to gaming for sure.
And
But
this
yeah,
is
even if you
something. Oh, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
I mean, if you look at the deal though, there's just some weird, bizarre things they agreed to get this to happen. Like streaming rights, they have given up to all Activision Blizzard games and sold them to Ubisoft. Like, what in the heck? Like, there's so many weird things they did to get this agreement through. I don't know why Microsoft's still bothered at this point. I mean, they spend a fortune for it. There's so many things that they really don't own from it. And yeah, so I view this more as is it good that Microsoft owns as many studios as they do? As far as being concerned though about them having a monopoly, that's not really a concern of mine. But hey, I'm just one guy, a very handsome, intelligent man, but just one.
And I'm actually not going to give my official stance until the end on this, but I think it's a very intriguing conversation because although you are right about this isn't like if you look at a textbook like what does a monopoly mean, this is not a monopoly. It's not because I mean what in that whole debacle with Blizzard Activision that was happening and them getting stopped, they basically went to court and said, "Look, we're losing the race." And they were like, "Look at us, we're the losers." And I'm like, this is a weird argument. I mean, you're right, I guess, but so they're yeah, but it's the thought of are we heading towards that, and are we heading towards like these three companies, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, just scooping up? They're getting FOMO. Like, well, if we don't do it, the others are going to do it, right? Like, kind of a thing. And I hope not. It seems like it's calmed down, but all right, I can get behind those points. I can understand those points. I do. I know it is a pain in the butt, but I do appreciate that it has taken this long for them to go through all of this stuff, right? Like that shows,
Even if
like,
it's just a formality, it's
yeah,
it's good that someone is like, whoa, 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 Mr. Businessman, you can't just do this
yeah. It's
willy
in
nilly.
people's faces too, like whether they want
Mhm.
it to be there or not. It's now like it's big enough for news, right? So like, it's there. Um, okay. So we're talking about monopolies and then buying up all this stuff. I want to pose the question: does this perspective of it leading possibly towards monopoly, like it's a signal of kind of like that Pinky in the Brain episode, right? Where it's like a signal of things to come. Does this change, or does this perspective or this idea change if the studios are maybe smaller? So maybe they go buy 20 studios, but they're all smaller studios, like tiny studios. Or is it because they were trying to get Activision Blizzard, which is huge, and Ubisoft was like trying to whore themselves out too. They were just like, hey, somebody could come in and buy us for a while there. And somebody was going to come in. I think it was like Tencent, which is another topic for that monopoly thing, where Tencent, which is a Chinese-based company, keeps coming in and buying up and buying talent and buying up studios. But they stepped in, and then Ubisoft was like, wait, no, we don't want to do that. So does that change? So like, what do you guys think? Does that perspective idea change if maybe the studios are smaller, maybe they're larger, maybe there's a better mix? What do you think?
I like that you brought it up because a lot of times we kind of fire from the hip with that monopoly branding. So we see, oh, Activision Blizzard is getting bought. But a lot of people don't realize that so many smaller studios are getting bought under the radar because they're not the size and scope of Activision Blizzard, which in of itself, Activision was buying Blizzard. So like it's kind of this domino effect of I bought you, now I'm being bought myself. So that's why it's a bit more apparent. And I like the idea that you're posing is does the perspective change if it's a bunch of smaller studios, which Nintendo has done, PlayStation and Sony has done very recently. They like within the past couple of years they bought like everything. And I know you did a long time ago a podcast specifically about, Sony buying a whole bunch of things. And I don't think this is actually very different in that regard, but it is good to know that like this isn't new. This has been happening for a while. And it does play into the question you kind of posed earlier is does this impact the creativity of the games that are coming out for us? And the answer is always like it could. But I'm inclined to say no because owning a smaller studio is very different than controlling a smaller studio. Like you are owning it in the hopes that you will make money. It is branded. Maybe you can do some exclusive content, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, so, yes, Monopoly is bad, but I don't think it's gonna impact the creative side, and I really didn't care that much about Activision Blizzard other than selfishly thinking, like, "Does this mean I can't get Diablo on my PlayStation?" And that's where the whole, like, Activision Blizzard deal is like, "No, no, no, we're still gonna make games for everything." But then there's Starfield, which is a very, very big game that honestly, Xbox and PC kinda need some exclusives in this one. Like, you could maybe say this pseudo monopoly is fighting the other monopoly, so it's not a real monopoly kinda deal. So it can change the perspective about it, yes, but I do think the creativity from smaller studios will actually thrive. They will make, I think, better, more creative games because they're not on their own. They actually have some backing where they want it to thrive. So that's what excites me the most because now you can get games like, even though they're independent, like Sea of Stars, which a lot of people in our community are like, this game is fantastic. This is awesome. Like, there's more flexibility for games like that to be made in this situation because they have a big backer of like Microsoft. So that's just my musing is Nintendo and Sony, they've done it. Creativity, I think, can still thrive, but I'm not too worried about it being a monopoly because this has been going on for a while. There's some jibber jabber from me. Scott, I'm sure you got something in regards to that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned towards the end of that how you think creativity can flourish because I 100% agree. So look at what's the game Redfall by Arcane. I think that's the
I
studio.
was gonna
Now,
point that one out too.
yeah. So granted, not saying it was great that it was a flop or there's lots to say about that situation, but at least you can say that if they were an independent studio, they probably would have made that same type of stinker, no matter if they were owned by Microsoft or not. If they made that type of stinker and they were an independent company, they may have had to go out of business. And I think it's kind of nice. Like I can only put myself in the shoes of like an owner of a game studio, thinking like, oh shit, if this game flops, I lose my house. This studio's going under. Like, there's plenty of stories I've read of like game studios that made a flop game and not even any fault of their own. They made a good game, it just never got traction, and they literally lost everything. And I feel like being bought by Microsoft, and granted, there's some people out there who just love being independent, love being their own boss. They don't care, and more power to them. I like to think though that a lot of small indie companies they view this as kind of like their reward. Like, oh, okay, I won the game. Like, I got bought by Microsoft. I'm loaded. I can still make games. Yeah, I have to go and answer to a boss now. But again, more textbook Scott going way off topic. But one story that kind of brings to mind to me is going to wrestling. There's a wrestler, Cody Rhodes, and he bailed on me, man, Mike's preferred wrestling company, AEW, a couple years ago, signed with WWE. There's Vince McMahon, if you do not know, he is the owner of WWE, at least for now. Cody Rhodes went to him and said, like, okay, now that I'm with WWE, do I have to get a new entrance theme? Do I have to get new logos? Do I have to like redo everything? And Vince McMahon said, no, you built the Cody Rhodes brand. I paid for the Cody Rhodes brand. I'm paying you millions and millions of dollars a year for the brand you built, for Cody Rhodes, for what you bring to the table. You keep it all. You keep your imagery, your logos, your song. That's what I paid for. And I view that as the same thing with not just Microsoft, but any major studio. If they buy another studio, yeah, there'll be some management, some follow up. But I don't view them as like you paid a lot of money for the studio. So what are you going to do? Make them just do a bunch of really crappy shovelware games? No, you're just wasting your money. Like you bought the brand, you bought the creativity. And I view a lot of these game owners, studio owners are probably sleeping a lot better at night knowing like, all right, I can have a flop like Redfall and I won't lose my house. Again, I don't think flops are good, and I think they should try really hard not to do it. But at least it's nice knowing that you have that Microsoft safety net. And if you keep making flops like Lionhead Studio with Fable, then yeah, there's going to be accountability eventually. But I think everybody deserves to be able to make one goof and not have to go and lose it all for it.
And I
And,
think specifically with Redfall, I think that will be the indicator with this Microsoft ecosystem, right, of all the developers they bought. What happens with so that developer has made good games previous to Redfall. That's why a lot of people were excited about Redfall. I was not one of them as soon as they said, "Oh, it's you play it online with people." And I went, "Okay, like I get what you're trying to do and you already lost me." It was like an always online and then they had to like backtrack it. Anyway, all that to be said, they specifically said it was like in-house, it was like the management wasn't right and all that stuff. And that's to the credit of Microsoft. Microsoft said, we bought you. We don't own you. We bought what you built. Okay, so make your games. You got the money. They didn't do enough oversight. So now that that was your stinker. So now we have to step in and make sure that you're not going to do that again. You still have control. I'm very interested to see how they handle Redfall, and that may change my perspective of this whole thing, right? But I think that's very interesting because I wouldn't call that studio an indie studio, a smaller studio, but they definitely, I wouldn't call them AAA either. And just so that you guys know, if hopefully I'm not mixing them up, they made the Dishonored games. So Dishonored 2, very not like they're linear, but kind of open world and game or open to in gameplay. Like, oh, well, I can tackle this however I like, right? So they're very fun games, very fun. But I'm very interested to see what Microsoft says about that now moving forward for their next game.
It might be similar to Sea of Thieves because Sea of Thieves came out and it was actually kind of a dud. And over time, it got better. And I think a lot of that was the support from Microsoft, which owns Rare Studios, which makes Sea of Thieves. And I was hearing some rumblings from those in like the more popular streaming community that like Microsoft is going to get its hands on Redfall and maybe it will get the Sea of Thieves effect where it's a very different game a year from now. Who knows? But that's one of the benefits is if it does come out as a stinker, Microsoft might be still invested, be like, maybe we should put more development to it. Another good example is Starfield that's coming out is, and I'm sure we'll talk about Starfield in a little bit more in depth, but Microsoft, from what I heard, put like almost all of their QA team onto that game. So there's the guys making the game, and they said, "Here's your QA team from us. We're gonna find those Bethesda." I can never say the studio name.
Bethesda.
Thank
Bethesda.
you.
I hope
can't
that
say it.
I kind of hope the Bethesda bugs aren't gone because that's like
It's part of its charm. I get that, but they with Microsoft being here is they can actually dedicate the more I don't know admin work, if you will. Like here's the guys making the game, but here's a staff of guys that can now be focused that you didn't initially have that can help hammer out bugs. So as long as there's this communal thing, that's kind of exciting. But I won't go into that regard. That's just some thoughts I had because you mentioned Redfall. Maybe think of Sea of Thieves, and then I started thinking about Starfield. That Microsoft has so many more resources that a studio otherly wouldn't have budgeted for or planned for. They actually get that support from a big, large company, which is kind of cool to make your game. Like if they let them make their game, like they made their Redfall and Redfall sucked, can they make it better? Or during the development, if they had given them more support, could have been better out the gate. That's just an interesting to think about. But I'll move on from this point myself. I just had some thoughts. You triggered a few things in my brain there.
well, and you just triggered something else too. Another point for Microsoft here is so they bought all these studios. How many games have come from those studios since they bought them? Redfall was like the first, right? I think Redfall was like the first from that giant onslaught, right?
Yeah.
The next one is Starfield, and then they've got some others that are coming up. Is that development hell, or is that them saying you have the money, make a good game, don't rush it? We saw this with Nintendo and Tears of the Kingdom. We saw how that turned out, right? When studios are given the proper amount of time and their QA teams can get in there, it's usually a better game. Not always, but usually a better game. So maybe this is Microsoft saying that's the benefit of Microsoft money, right? Of take your time, make it good. We want this, like Starfield, like you said, we want this to be the poster child so that people see that and go, that's what this is about.
I'm so glad that we're mostly outside of the shovelware game
Good
boom that we
lord.
had with the Nintendo
The
Wii.
Wii.
I'm
Awful.
so glad that studios are like, quality equals money. I'm so glad we were on that. But anyway, I'll digress from that point. I know you got another good question for us, Mike, because I know you had some good ones. What do you got?
Yeah, so in all of this talk about creativity and enough time to develop these games and stuff like that. So, okay, let's talk about Starfield and let's talk about all of these games that these developers are working on. Hellblade 2, Senua's Sacrifice, which I'm very, very excited for. I loved the first game. Absolutely just like, well, I say loved. I don't know if loved is the right word, but it hit me. It like made its
It
mark on
was
me.
a unique, special game with what it did with sound design. We'll leave it at that.
Well,
The
and just
sound
the
design.
story, like the story itself, the characterization, the mocap of I can't remember her name, but the girl that played the woman who played Senua, putting on like she should have won. I don't know if she did. I think she did. Like won the actor, like the acting award or something. Like I was like, you did a good job. Anyway, all that to say, will these new studios start making exclusives? We're seeing it with Starfield and Bethesda, but they've also said, like, hey, the Call of Duties, they'll be coming over. Hey, all these other things, they'll be coming over. If we get Activision Blizzard, Diablo's coming. Like, they're not limiting those. So are they going to start making exclusives here eventually? And it would be dumb for Microsoft not to do this eventually, right? Like, that's the argument of exclusive sell consoles and sell your brand. They sell your brand, right?
Yeah, I know Scott has some good thoughts, so I'll go first because I want to hear Scott's stuff. I'm pretty excited to hear his mini rant because I'm sure that's how it's going to come out. Is is right now my stance is Blizzard Activision games, as we said earlier, are going to be shared. That's what's stated. I don't think they're ever pull that away, and there's a reason for it. I know Scott's going to talk about it. But I kind of was thinking when you posed this question is what games will they keep exclusive? Because they shouldn't do all. And again, I want to hear from Scott on this one. They shouldn't do all, but they have to do some to answer your actual question. They have to. If you own these studios, you have to have some things that are solely and uniquely yours. Sony had it with Ratchet and Clank, which is now on PC. They had it with God of War, which is now on PC. They had it with Returnal, not as good as those games. Now it's on PC. So they're even branching out. So even the ones that were like tried and true, this is a Sony game, eventually they were brought onto the PC. So Starfield, will it eventually come to PS5? I think it will, in all honesty, but I think they're going to do what Sony did and just wait it out that you get your exclusives, and then there might be a PS5 one. But I'd be curious what kind of games are they going to keep? And I don't know if they're going to keep very many. So I was thinking of asking you guys what kind of games you think they're going to keep, but I will digress on that one.
I'll answer at the end. I'll throw in my stuff because Scott's got some good points that I want him to
Yeah,
go through.
so I will defer to Scott now. Scott, what do you think about games only on one platform?
So I think we're going about this with our boomer brains, thinking of like even though this is how the video game industry has been since we've been playing games, I think there's lots of evidence that it is rapidly changing from that direction. And what Mike said earlier, that exclusives sell consoles, yeah, that's true. But the question is, do they really care about selling consoles anymore? I know definitely in the case of like Nintendo and Sony, yes. I think in the case of Microsoft, the answer to that is no. And I think there's lots of evidence with that, like the fact that a lot of PlayStation Series S and Series X games can still be played on Xbox One kind of shows that. I think the biggest evidence of that is Game Pass, though. I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to go get my crystal ball, try to look in the future. I feel like in 10 years from now, there will not be an Xbox anymore, and Game Pass will be on whatever Switch we're at, Switch free or whatnot. I don't think Sony will play along, but I think Microsoft is trying to position themselves to be the Netflix of gaming. And all these moves, buying Activision Blizzard, buying all these other studios, I feel like this is them trying to go and stock up on. So in a way, they will be exclusives, Game Pass exclusives, but it's not going to go and be tied to the console anymore. If you look at how much money they make on consoles, it's not that much. I think Nintendo has the best profit margin. Sony breaks even, maybe makes a little bit of money, and Microsoft actually loses a lot of money. But if you look at it, Microsoft's okay with that because they just make so much money off Game Pass. Game Pass is a money maker for them, and I think that's the direction they're going to be moving in. So, as far as like, are they ever going to make Diablo 5 Microsoft exclusive? No, it doesn't make any sense. One, they're losing out on all that money. They paid a ton of money for it. They want to maximize their investment. That's just sound business. If you're only keeping it on Xbox, all right, how many more Xboxes is that going to sell? And how much revenue is going to be driven from that versus all the tens of millions of players that we're leaving out by not bringing it over to PlayStation or whatnot? So I do really think we're going about this with a little bit of an outdated business model in mind. And the industry is very much changing, in my opinion. And I think that Microsoft is playing a good long game of chess and they're getting their pawns all set up for the new world of video games.
So I'm glad that you brought up Sony and Nintendo in that, because they like you said, I feel like Microsoft is a very unique case, because think about this. If Microsoft didn't have PC stuff, right? Microsoft was literally just the Xbox. How do you think they'd be doing financially right now?
Terrible.
They might be gone. They might be like Sega, right? Right? So I think they have the ability to go big brain, okay? To go I actually do agree with you about Game Pass. I feel like they're going to make that like, hey, play it on whatever system you want to play on, you're going to pay us money. But I do think, and I don't think you're completely refuting the idea of consoles, exclusive selling consoles, and consoles being a big deal, game consoles being a big deal. But I was just looking at some numbers here for since 2017. So the says current generation video game console. This is from Statista. I don't know how valid this is, but I know that this is generally what I was seeing. I wanted to make sure I saw it. So 2017, Switch sold 13.12 million units. How many of those units were because of Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey? It wasn't third parties. The following year, it sold 16.37 additional. It wasn't more first party games. The third year, 19.33. In 2020, do you care to guess how many freaking units they sold? I didn't realize it was as much. Hint, it's millions. Any guesses at all? So we went 13,
3.
16, 19.
I go with 3,000,001. We're doing Price is Right rules.
Dang it! In honor of Bob Barker.
And
R.I.P.
Scott wins because it was 28.47 million units in 2020. What one game for the Switch, the big game, came out in 2020 when we were all on lockdown?
Oh,
Animal Crossing.
Do either of you play Animal Crossing right now?
No.
But you knew it. So
Yeah.
my point being, and then the PS5 and the Xbox Series X were like measly because of stuff, but they're catching up now. So 4.3 for the PlayStation, 3.0 for the Xbox, 2021, 12.7 for the PS5, 8.6 for the Xbox, and then this last year, 13.8 for the PS5, 8.67 again for the Xbox. So I feel like, yes, for Microsoft, it is true that exclusives don't matter in a sense, monetarily only. I do think they matter for branding, because here on the Buds Bustin' Balls podcast now, we are all about branding, and we changed it to podcast because we're not going to just be talking about games anymore. There's a little plug. So that being said, I do think exclusives do play a big deal. I'm very interested, to your point too, Matt, if Starfield is going to make its way to PlayStation in like a year or two. I actually don't think it will. I think kind of like how Nintendo with Tears of the Kingdom, they're like, we'll make our game $70 on a case by case. Okay, well, what's the metric for that? That was their answer, right? I feel like Microsoft's going to pull that like, Starfield's exclusive. Okay, well, what about Hellblade? I don't know, maybe. We'll see about that. Like, I feel like it's going to be a case-by-case thing, and it's all about branding, making your Xbox, not Microsoft, your Xbox brand bigger. And Game Pass builds your brand. That is built. Scott, I know you and we are like, I feel like we always knock on Matt's front door and try to give him the good news of Game Pass. And say, like, have you heard the good word of Game Pass? We love it. There are many games on there where I've tried, I would have never tried, and I go, that was booty crack. I'm glad I didn't spend a dime. Or I spent a dime, but it was for other things, right? Or I played a game and I went, I want to own that. Like, I want that in my collection. I don't want it on Game Pass, so eventually if I do quit Game Pass, right? That's kind of how I see Game Pass. So, interesting. I kind of do agree with you, Scott. I kind of don't. It's like,
I think
software, you are 100% certain software is the moneymaker. Like, the Switch is doing so well. You could put a wet fart in game form on the Switch, and it would sell. I don't know why.
I mean, what's interesting though, look at Microsoft exclusives or quote unquote exclusives. You have the Ori games, you have Cuphead, you have so many examples of even these games that were Microsoft exclusives eventually. Like, okay, you go to Nintendo now, you can go to PlayStation. Like, I think it's a little bit different with like your Gears of War and your Halos, just because that, again, that's a branding thing. That's like a core franchise and like a AAA game. And yeah, I think, like you said, it's very much a case by case situation. Is Starfield going to be considered AAA? I guess it's considered AAA. So it is going to be kind of really interesting to see if it ever makes it to other consoles. But as far as, the other smaller games, and you know what? It just only makes more business. If you want to be like 100% like sneaky businessman, you put out the wide net. It's like, all right, here's a brand new franchise. It's establishing itself. It's critically acclaimed, but still, not everybody's played it. All right, let's let the Nintendo people play it too. Oh, now we have millions of fans from Nintendo. Let's Sony people, PlayStation people play it. Cool. Now we have millions of fans there. Oh, now we're going to make Ori 3. By the way, Microsoft exclusive now. And then who knows how many of those Nintendo and PlayStation, like, dang it, I like the first one so much. Damn it. Okay, I guess I'll maybe buy into Xbox finally. So I don't know. Maybe there will be some trickery like that happening. Only time will tell.
And I was trying to look it up here too, but I can't find it. I wanted to see how games like the Ori games, how Cuphead did on Switch. I think they did okay on PlayStation, but there's so many weird Sony ponies and Xbots out there. There's freaking Nintendrones out there too. I'm borderline Nintendrone, but I can step back and look at it and go, I don't know about that.
I don't know the numbers, but they sold really good on the Switch from
so I'm like thinking like Microsoft probably sees that and goes, hey, like Minecraft on Switch.
Oh,
that blew up again. This game that's how old now? I remember that being a thing, Matt, when we were at Olive Branch, and somebody was like, have you played Minecraft? And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, you build things in blocks. Don't play it. You'll lose your life. And I'm like, okay. And then I just proceeded to never play it. But yeah, like, it's crazy. So anyway, so all this talk about the exclusives, I want to follow that up with another question, because, I like questions. So Microsoft went and bought all these studios, right? And we've established that both Nintendo and Sony did the same exact thing. So Sony did it with, right after Microsoft was buying stuff, and that's what made me kind of worried initially. But they did it with smaller studios, but the bigger one for them was it Bungie? No, the people who did Destiny. They basically like Bungie bought that, and now they're trying to be more online focused, right? And they actually moved largely out of Japan. So now Nintendo's basically got a stranglehold on Japan. But all that to be said, Nintendo did the same thing. They found smaller studios. Look at freaking The Xenoblade Chronicles developer, Monolith Soft. Monolith Soft helped them with the Zelda games, helped them with Splatoon games, Splatoon 2 and 3, helped them with all of these other games. They're like, hey, we need help, Monolith Soft. Hey, we need help, Monolith Soft. Hey, make some games, Monolith Soft. All the Xenoblade Chronicle games, except for one, are on the freaking Switch. Like, they are prolific. They are a first-party Nintendo developer that Nintendo bought before they got bigger, right? So it happens. Why doesn't, kind of similar to Sony does this too, Nintendo does it, why doesn't Microsoft create in-house dev teams that learn how to work with Microsoft from the beginning? Like, I look at for Sony, Guerrilla. Okay, I think it's called Guerrilla Studios, and as much as I don't care for the games or the game, the Horizon series, they did well. They sold well. They did well. And that was like an in-house. I think they also did the kill zones back in the day. I could be wrong about that. They built them up, and now they've got a million sellers there, right? Sony Santa Monica made one of all three of our favorite games of all time, God of War Ragnarok. That was, they built that up. Nintendo, I already gave some examples there. Why doesn't Microsoft do that? Like, I feel like they do have a couple, like the Forza team. Turn around the corner, Ben, whatever their name is, right? The ones that are now doing Fable 4, which is blowing my mind. But why don't they do that?
I wonder if they technically do already, or because to go back to the Starfield example, like Microsoft did give them a bunch of QA testers. So they have at least that admin background. So to the level that you are stating, do they have that right now? Probably not. I bet they're looking at it. I think it would be very, very good, especially if you're going to own so many studios. So I think it's already there. So I would not be shocked to see that expanded upon. I think it's coming if it's not officially there or even unofficially there. It will be expanded upon, but they do have the resources, which is great. I love that for gaming.
Yeah, like I'll tell you right now, and I'm going to use another off the wall analogy, but it works. Just trust me on this. It's like WWE versus AEW. Damn it, I keep going back to the wrestling. AEW started off, they weren't in a position where they could go and hire a bunch of nobodies and like build talent up from the ground up. No, they bought known people on the indie circuit. They hired Chris Jericho, various legends. They needed to establish themselves, and now they're starting to do more homegrown people. But at first there was that period of like, all right, we need to go and build credibility up in the wrestling community's eyes. Let's go and buy into, put the investment into buying already established people. You take WWE, completely the opposite. Most of their talent goes through their NXT system. So basically like nobodies, and they build them up after years and years and years. And yeah, they go and fork over the money to buy big names here and there like Cody Rhodes. But, they have the luxury of they already are the number one wrestling brand in the entire world. They're able to go and take their time. I think it's a very similar situation with Microsoft versus like your Sony and your Nintendo. Microsoft, that's been the joke for like over a decade, that Microsoft has Gears of War, Forza, Halo, and what else? And so are they going to go? Yeah, it would be a lot cheaper for them if they just go and start studios from the ground up and build them up. Do they have that luxury of time? They've already kind of pissed away over a decade. No. So, hey, let's go to these studios that are known commodities, that have a proven track record, that we know people like, that have built-in fan bases. We're not buying just the company, we're buying the fan base along with it. You have Nintendo, Sony, they can go and start studios up from the ground up. They don't have to buy people left and right, because you know what? They already have. Like Nintendo, Mike, you were saying it before, like Tears of the Kingdom was a console seller. Breath of the Wild was a console seller. They don't have to go and try to buy Ubisoft and get Assassin's Creed on the Switch. Why do they? They already built their own megastars, just like WWE. WWE doesn't need to go and buy the contracts for massive wrestling stars. They already built the John Cena's and the Brock Lesnar's of the wrestling world. So I think it's just cost reward type of system, risk reward.
You know what? I am a Sony guy first, right? And I admit that. I Sony, the last two generations of consoles, I preferred them. I like the PS5, I like the PS4. And even though this is for, Xbox and PC, which while I have a PC, I don't really like playing on it. Well, I don't have an Xbox, and I know that they're going to be making games that will likely at least start on their system before coming to mine. I do think this is good for gaming overall. Even if I, as a Sony guy, don't have access to it, I think this is good overall. And I kind of thought that going into this conversation, but hearing you guys all talk about it and really the support for the other studios, the potential business model of creating these in-house dev teams to like really work and hammer out these games that aren't just like this is mine, I own it, or to go to the WWE reference, the Vince McMahon says whatever should be happening is what happening. I think they're going to give them room to breathe, and that has me excited just for gaming, even if I don't have access to the games by my deliberate choice, of course. So I like this. Like I know a lot of people are like Monopoly's bad. We're kind of going full circle with this here, but I think this is good overall. I'm excited to see that, especially if they really do put in these business models and it shows that it works, because that could be applied to a lot of things too. I know movie studios do it all the time. Like, hey, you're working on this, use our resources for that. It's a tried and true model. I'm excited to see what happens and hopefully not eat words that it ends up bad. So I'm excited.
Well, since we're talking about our conclusions, right, or like what we think about it, so you think it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
my last point that I have here, it feeds into my answer what I think about it. So Scott, what do you think? Do you think that this is a good thing that Microsoft has been doing, or do you think it's a bad thing?
I am cautiously optimistic. I know we have like Mike is a resident Nintendo fanboy, Matt is PlayStation, and I'm Microsoft. Doesn't necessarily mean though that like give it all to Microsoft. Just trust and let's go for it. I think Microsoft has said the right things. I think so far they have mostly done the right things, and even if they change their mind, just the public's eyes are on them, government's eyes are on them, and I personally think I'm pretty optimistic for the future of gaming, to be honest. And one of the hugest reasons, again, like Mike said, we are those annoying people knocking at your door trying to spread the good word. I think Game Pass has been one of the best things for gaming in quite some time. And, that's 100% Microsoft idea. And I think these things they're doing are only going to go and make the Game Pass bigger. I really love Microsoft's philosophy of like, hey, on your smartphone, your tablet, your Switch, whatever, we're going to pour money into streaming. And, the days of having to download a 100 gigabyte video game are behind us. I think the future of gaming is exciting. And I think Microsoft has a clear vision and it's really starting to come together. And that's a vision that I'm excited about. And the really funny thing is, originally when the Xbox One came out and everybody trashed on it and all those decisions they made with it, a lot of what we're seeing today, the Xbox One, their original vision, is kind of coming to life, but we weren't ready for it back then. And definitely they had some major marketing problems and they did not present it the right way. But they had a vision back then. This isn't just a 5-year or even 10-year thing. This is like long time in the making. It's coming together. I'm excited to see it. And yeah, but time will tell.
All right. So we have a good, we think it's good. We have a cautiously optimistic, and I'm gonna be that guy. So I was gonna try to just be like the contrarian and be like, I think it's terrible. I'm actually gonna go the complete opposite way. I think this is a great thing, not just a good thing. I think it's gonna be a great thing. I do agree. These next few years, like coming up, how they handle things over the next 5 years, I'd say, it's gonna tell a lot about where they're headed, and that'll be really telling on this conversation we're having. I think it's going to be a great thing because exclusives sell your brand. Microsoft needs those. Microsoft has been very vocal about we want inclusion on everything. Matt said it great too. Even if it's not on my platform, it's still good for gaming, right? I didn't have an Xbox. Did you guys have an Xbox? I had a PlayStation 2 and a GameCube. I did not have an Xbox.
Nope.
But what did we all have after?
360.
The 360. And that's still, to this day, one of my all-time favorite systems ever. Same games were on the PS3. Why? Because of the ecosystem. Because they did have those exclusives, those Gears of War, even if it wasn't as big of a pedigree as Sony or Nintendo. So I think it's a good thing. And I think they should do some exclusives. Personally, they also have the benefit of them doing exclusives that Nintendo and Sony don't is they can go, Yes, Starfield is exclusive to Xbox and PC. Hey Matt, you love your PlayStation. You'd rather play it on there, but you can still play it right on your PC. Mike, you love your Nintendo, but you can still play it. Like, they had lean into that, man. Microsoft lean into that. So you're saying, like, look, because Sony they'll put their 10-year-old games on PC and then charge full price for them. They're pulling Nintendo's there. So anyway, I think it's a great thing. And we've seen very positive examples of this in the past too. I named two with Nintendo. Monolith Soft, they were bought by Nintendo in 2007. They did the Xenoblade Chronicles games. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was their best-selling game they've ever done. And they helped Nintendo out with all of their other big games. Next Level Games is another one. Luigi's Mansion series. Luigi's Mansion 3, it is now a Nintendo. This is one of the big dogs. Like, it's in their top chart for the Switch. And I'm like, this was I think Next Level Games made shovelware. I think that's kind of what they like, on the verge of shovelware. And now look what they're doing, right? So I think this is a good thing if kept in check. So we'll see in the next 5 years.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like tonight's talk was enlightening. I feel better spiritually, morally, intellectually, gamerly. And I don't know about you out there who's listening to this, but I like to think that you agree. And if you do agree, which obviously you do, tell us. Tell us, give comments, say you love this content, you think we're doing such a great job. Tell your friends that, hey, there's these three awesome, handsome gentlemen that just started season 2 of their podcast. You should totally go and subscribe to. Subscribe, like, share. That is the Buds Bustin' Balls podcast. We are available on YouTube on some link out there somewhere that I'm sure you can go and find very easily scrolling down a screen or something like that. Check us out. We will be doing this every Wednesday. We'll record on Wednesday. I don't know when we're releasing it. Mike can answer that or something. But we're here to stay, people. We're having a good time, and we hope you're having a good time too. With that said, we are starting to branch out this season. One very exciting thing that we're doing that we all talked about at the conclusion of the last season of things we'd like to see incorporated is a little bit more viewer engagement. So again, going back to you guys asking us questions, we have a very lovely, cool, handsome form that you can go and visit and submit questions to us, the Buds Bustin' Balls gang, the Triple B boys. And we will go, maybe, if you're a good boy or girl, answer the question for you. And I am pleasantly surprised that as of the time we're recording, we have had this form available for only like maybe 2 hours, and we're already up to 7 questions submitted. So that is some very encouraging early engagement. And you know what? To kick things off is recognition you guys for being so enthusiastic about this. We're not going to just answer one question. We're not even going to answer 2 questions. No, we are answering 3 questions.
I heard you had a question. So many questions. Why don't you ask your question and the buds will bust an answer for you.
And as our MC for this question segment, I'm going to turn off to Mr. Bowerbottom himself. Take it away, big guy.
Bowerbottom, go! And before I get into this, I do have to say, you guys really should go and, ask some questions in this form. This form is brilliant. And guess who made this form? Scott made this form. Matt didn't do it. I didn't do it. And it's freaking awesome. This is so easy and great and wonderful. This is like my OCD of like keeping everything nice and clean. It's just like satisfied right now. This is great. All right, so we're never going to ask these questions at the beginning. We're going to leave it at the end because you got to listen to us. Sorry, we come first. Then you come after.
Oh, oh my.
This first question goes to everybody. So, I'll let you guys answer first and then I'll throw mine out there. This is from Tara. Of baseball, hockey, football, and basketball, which sport is your favorite to watch? So, is it just those 4? Or is it just kind of like hey, what's your favorite sport, right?
I believe the question speaks for itself. Tara is a very intellectual, smart individual. They knew what they were doing when they posted that question, all right? we're picking between the 4. And I'm going to kick it off because I am the massive, like, I don't give a shit about sports guy. I'm going to actually give 2 different answers. For sports, I'm going to go with football just because it has I don't like any sports really, but at least football has like that really big energy feel, big stadiums, lots going on. At least it feels kind of exciting. But on the opposite direction, my favorite team is not a football team. I am actually going to go with the Angels. I am proud, born and bred SoCal boy. So I feel like if you come from SoCal, there has to be like one of 3 teams that you're a diehard fan of. That would be the Lakers, the Angels, and the Dodgers. And the other 2 are booty cracks. So obviously it's the Angels. I've actually been front row at an Angels game before. So yes, I love the Angels.
It's funny that you said the Dodgers are booty crack when they're not.
They're always good, but we hate the Dodgers because they have a lot of money.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why they win. I'll digress on that one. The answer to the question for me is 100% baseball. I still watch baseball to this day. All of us grew up in California. Scott and I were born and raised Southern California boys. I grew up in a town called Yerba Linda next door to Anaheim. I spent a lot of my childhood going to Angel games. So I am still a big Angels fan, even though I shouldn't be because of how awful, terrible our team has been. As of this podcast, I think yesterday they put a bunch of big players on waivers because they know they're not going to win this season. So they're trying to dump as much money to get below the luxury tax because, the billionaire owner of the team can't afford lunches or something. But baseball for sure. I love baseball. I've been to many stadiums. Big Angels guy here. So baseball, no question. Love baseball.
And for me, basketball. It's my favorite sport. I love it when they dribble up and down the court. It's basketball. It's basketball, 100%. I mean, I used to watch hockey all the time, and then it used to be all baseball. And I still like baseball is great to put on in just the background. Like like I'll be working if there's like an afternoon game, I'll put it on my PC or something. Yeah, like it's just good to like every day be like, oh yeah, and then you go back to work. But basket as far as like, yeah, it's got to be basketball. And unfortunately, so I got married into a team here in Southern California that's not the Lakers. I actually don't mind the Lakers at all. I like them, but I got married into the other LA team, the Clippers. And every year I'm reminded of disappointment. Every year. But see, Scott, you should love the Clippers. Do you want to know why?
I love winners, all right?
But do you know who owns the Clippers?
Who owns the Clippers?
You should look. I want you to look it up. I want to see your face. You should search it up.
All right. Let's see here. Who owns?
We're good. I have this build up.
Steve Ballmer. All right. Well, actually, he's no longer involved in Microsoft, so fuck that guy. I don't get.
That's because he retired, handed it off to somebody else, and said, "It's your turn now," and took his money and went, "I want a basketball team," and he bought it from a racist jerkbag. So, and he, if you watch him in the games, I love Steve Ballmer. He is so excited about these games all the time. He loves basketball. So I'm like,
he was running Microsoft into the ground, so hopefully he does a little bit better with the Clippers.
I like that he owns a basketball team and he has the word ball in his name. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, he's a Ballmer.
That's neat.
All right, so there it is. So there are your answers for that, Tara. I hope they have satisfied your question. Next up, this one is from Cubic X. We all call him Cube. This is for our buddy Scott. What is your favorite budget Lego set? Budget Lego set, not just Lego set, budget Lego set.
Well, that's kind of a tricky question now because Legos, I feel like if you only spend $100 on a set, that's a bargain right there. But trying to keep it as budget as possible, I am going to go with this little lovely set here. It was part of Lego's Endgame series. So you got a little fat, Big Lebowski, Chris Hemsworth right there, Rock Dude next to him, chilling out watching some television. I love this set so much just because of how irrelevant and stupid and amazing it is. I think it was, to be honest, it cost me nothing because I got it for Christmas, but I'm pretty sure it goes for $29.99. Yes, the ultimate budget. But I'm pretty sure it goes for $29.99. Not sure if it's still available, but man, I love this little set. It's nice, compact. There's tons of great little Easter eggs in it. I love it. This would probably be my favorite budget set right
That
here.
kind of blows my mind that it's $29.99. It's Marvel and it's Lego and it's actually nice. Like, that's a pretty good deal. All right. So that one's all done ski. And our last one for tonight, this one is for Matt by Flying Ram.
Flying Ram.
That could be taken a lot of different ways. If you were a Pokemon, which one would you be?
For anyone that follows my stream knows that I basically played the first 2 generations of Pokemon Legends and nothing else. So there's a lot of Pokemon I don't know about, but if I had to pick one, the funny one would be Probopass because it's just a giant head with a mustache, but that wouldn't be fun to live as just a giant head with a mustache. I would love to be Incineroar just because of the pro wrestling gimmick that he has. I love playing him as Smash Brothers, and he has 2 legs and hands, so he's kind of like a human, I guess. I think Incineroar would be the Pokemon I would want to be. He just seems so cool, and I like the wrestling gimmick. But that is a fun question, and I need Mike and Scott to answer this as well. I know it was targeted to me, but I want them to answer.
We do what we want.
All right, maybe you don't have to answer. If one of you want to answer, one of you answer me. I don't care. I
No,
don't know. What Pokemon would you be?
Without second thought, Snorlax.
Oh,
At this point in my-
perfect.
At this point in my life, there's only 2 things I care about anymore, and that's eating and sleeping. Boom,
Beautiful.
right there. And the thing is, I'm actually celebrated for that. In my real life, people call Scott a lazy piece of shit for only wanting to do those 2 things. But if I'm Snorlax, it's like, yeah, good job, Snorlax, being Snorlax. Give me that recognition I deserve.
Stupendous. I liked how quickly you had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
brought me joy. What do you got, Mike? You got
So
one?
are we going? So I was thinking about leaning a little bit more into the ironic Pokemon. My favorite Pokemon is Bulbasaur, and that would fit really well because I love being outdoors. I've somehow gotten a green thumb in the last 5 years. I don't know. I like all that stuff. But if we're going, I'm going to go ironic here. I would probably be Mr. Mime
Stupendous.
because I love to talk, and Mr. Mime don't talk. So that'd be kind of funny. But I do use my hands a lot when I talk. And so I guess that fits. So I'd probably be Mr. Mime.
Plus, you control people with those barriers, which is always funny.
Yeah.
Like go play in traffic. You have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I'm not sure if you've seen Detective Pikachu, but the potential is there. I can see you pulling it off.
That was a
That
fun
whole
move,
thing, I already got the shaved head here, so I just need to grow some,
Mhm.
little blue fro things out on the side here. and I'm set.
Halloween costume idea.
There we go. Hey, we should all dress up as something for Halloween and do a podcast.
I think we should.
That's a good
Just
idea.
saying.
That's a
Just
really good
saying.
idea.
Let's do it. I got my costume already. It's easy, but I got one.
So we've done a lot new in this podcast. New format. We've got we're professionals here, okay? It's all about the brand. It's all about the brand.
The brand.
The brand.
Or
The brand. The brand. Stay on brand.
Stay on brand. But there's one thing that we would not budge on, that would not change around, it would not go away, it would not change its spot,
Even if we wanted to.
even if we wanted to. He does what he wants. This is Scotty Porta Potty rant time. Go!
Look over there, he just doesn't care. He's going off on a crowd of people, throwing words in the air like he just don't care. He's yelling at all of us sheeple. It's a Scotty Porta Potty rant. It's a Scotty Porta Potty rant. It's a Scotty Porta Potty rant. It's rant time.
Let me tell you something, brother. We all know that you just sat for over an hour just to listen to the Scotty Porta Potty rant. And you know what? We're back. We're meteor this time. And you know who is going to get it this time? Who is going to get the very first Scotty Porta Potty rant of the season? Kids Bop, brother. That's right. Kids Bop. And unfortunately, not Kids Boppers, because it is not a bopper. It is just a bop. Bullshit. Now, what type of idiot sat around and just thought, you know what we should do? Let's get popular songs, get a bunch of really obnoxious kids to cover them. Money! You know, that guy actually isn't an idiot. He's smart, because there's so many of you stupid parents out there that actually kept it going. Like, what type of mental gymnastics are going on in your head? I'm really uncomfortable with my child listening to WAP by Cardi B. Oh, but this is a version of it sung by a bunch of kids. I'm okay with it now. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's so stupid. Like, and here's the thing that blows my mind. All right, whatever. You want your kid to listen to that music and they wear headphones and you don't have to listen to it yourself? That's cool. Kids Bop tours. They perform live. That means
No.
actually parents. They do. I was at a concert and they were advertising upcoming concerts, and they had right up there, Kids Bop Live, September 27th. Yes, I know the date because I was so horrified. Like, what the fuck? Who would want to go and listen to that live? Parents, what is wrong with you? Why? Kids Bop, why are you a thing? It's been over 20 years. How are you still around? You deserve a spot in hell like you do for what you've done to the world. I hate you, Kids Bop. And God bless United States of America. Thank you.
I don't like how I physically felt slapped across the face with those memories. I don't like that you just brought that up. You're 100% right.
Oh, no.
They're the
And
worst thing in the world.
So here's the really disturbing part. I actually did like a dry run of this with my friend as we were carpooling together to work. And I just did a rant, and I said the WAP Cardi B thing. I said that 100% ironically as a joke. Like, there's no way they did it. Look it up. There is 100% a cover by Kids Bop for a song that stands for wet ass. Sorry, I can't say the last word. Like, that's the world we live in. Look it up if you don't believe me.
No, I was gonna say one of the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm assuming it's Kids Bop because it's a bunch of kids singing it. But there's a song I don't know what it's called, but it's the chorus is, "We're gonna bang bang into the room. I'm gonna bang bang all over you." And like, you hear the song, it's a catchy song. But they do a Kids Bop version of that, and I was trying to look up the lyrics really quick while we're doing this. But there is a Kids Bop, a bunch of kids bang, bang, and then they sing something else, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. Why is this going?
Kids Bop is an abomination. I'm telling you guys. Anyways.
That's a good
All
word.
right.
That's a good word for it. Abomination.
And with that, we will end.
Nation.
It is not a bopper nation. Anyway, with that said, Mike, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, so this is where we say our goodbyes. I know. You were ready to say goodbye about an hour ago, but you still stayed. You hung out with us, and you still stayed strong. We do appreciate that. But this is where we say our goodbyes. This is where we do a little self-promotion, because it's all about the brand. I'm Bauer Tendo. You can catch me streaming on Twitch. As of right now, it's Mondays and Tuesdays. You know, by the time you listen to this, maybe years from now, maybe I'm doing something else. To my right is Celiac_Matt. You can catch him streaming on Twitch Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and just a bunch of random other days whenever he feels like streaming Marvel Snap. And below me here is Scott Stevens, SM Stevens Streams. Eventually we'll start streaming at some point. I'm going to keep saying that until he actually does. It's like
It will happen.
It's like
5 years from
Sasquatch.
now, it's still going.
Yeah, it's like Sasquatch, right? Underwear Sasquatch. But anyway, thank you, viewer. Thank you, listener, for hanging out. Hope you like this new layout, this new thing that we've done. We put a lot of time and effort into this, and we hope that have we not entertained you? Have we not entertained you? You should like this video. You should subscribe. You should share this with your friends, like Scott said earlier, the brand guru. And until next time, bye.